let me first just welcome you so much to our webinar for today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Krumpak. I have been in learning and development for a long time, actually since I was 18. I first started my learning and development career. I was working in a call center in Akron, Ohio, actually. And this is a long time ago, so I'm going to date myself. This is like 1990. And I was making like $30 an hour, which is a lot of money in 1990. And I went to the VP one day and I said, you know what? I would love to train these people and help them sell. We were selling all these like interesting products that you probably have seen on TV, the Nordic Track, the Easy Glider, Oriental Pearl Cream, the Ronco Food Dehydrator, like all these crazy products. And this is like at the height of when we had all of this infomercials. So people would see these infomercials, they'd call up, they're like, oh, can you send me some information? And then I would call them up and give them 3 easy payments of $19.95. And so I was doing really well. And I went to the VP and I said, hey, can I train? She's like, no, you're doing so great on the phones. Go back and make us money. And I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden, we called her the personnel coordinator back then. She was sick and they came to me and they said, Michael, you have a training class of 6 people, go spend a week and train them everything you know. And I'm like, holy heck, like I've never done this, but I fell in love with doing learning and development. And it's so rewarding for me to actually see someone that has a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity, and to kind of groom them and kind of push and motivate them and see them flourish to something pretty amazing. So I've been doing this for about, God, like 35 years or so. And right before the pandemic, I decided to get my professional coaching certification. So I know we have a couple coaches in the house. If you wouldn't mind just kind of acknowledging yourself, raising your hand, or if you want, you can put up your hand as well. You should have access to that. So if you want to like raise your hand, you can do that. Or if not, just put up your hand to do that. Mary, thank you. Jimmy, all my coaching friends. So anyways, I've been coaching for years, but I never had the official credential. So I decided to go through the University of Miami's executive coaching program. And it started like 3 weeks before COVID. So what was supposed to be a more face-to-face experience ended up to be pretty virtual, but it was a great experience. And I learned a lot. Finally got over 500 hours of coaching, and some of you on the call are clients, some of you are friends, some of you are other coaches that I've had the opportunity and the privilege to partner with and work with. And I'm not going to call you guys out, except for, I guess, the coaches, but one of my first mentees that I ever had, she's actually on the call today. So I don't know if she wants to self-identify, but so all that to say, I've been doing learning and development, and I've kind of like pivoted over the years, and I've layered on top this new thing about coaching. So a lot of the coaching that I do is focused on leadership, career, a little bit of life coaching in there. My background is in industrial organizational psychology. So I'm not a therapist, but I look at the behaviors of a workplace and try to match the talent that we have with the behaviors that organizations need and bring them together. I have been working with Hogan assessments. I know some of you on the call are familiar with that. Like I said, I'm part of the International Coaching Federation. And sort of my claim to fame is doing white glove leadership cultivation. So my belief is we all learn very differently. If you and I were sitting down one-on-one together right now, it would probably be a completely different experience than having us all come together. So what white glove cultivation is it's really understanding people's strengths, their preferences, their learning styles, how they like to communicate, how they like to learn, how they like to interact, and really customize what that experience is. So I help a lot of people that have just been promoted to a senior role to make sure they hit the ground running, get a lot of good traction. Those people that maybe have been passed over for a promotion, work with them to try to uncover some blind spots and get them to bubble up to the next level. So that's a little bit about me and some of the opportunities I've had to work with over the years. I worked at American Airlines. I was a senior performance consultant working in corporate, which was in Washington, D.C. I had the opportunity to work on high potential director development at Samsung. I was consultant at Deloitte for a while. I was a graduate professor at Catholic University teaching ethical leadership, which I have a couple exercises I shamelessly lifted from my class and put into today's webinar. I led the learning and development at the House of Representatives and a couple other things. So I've really had a fun career. And I was digging through, putting some final touches on the slides, and I found some potentially embarrassing pictures that I at least wanted to kind of show with you. So the first picture is me when I was 18, when I was just kind of thrown into a learning and development role. That's me with the skateboard hair when I had a lot more hair. And then in grad school, I developed a hiring assessments for bus drivers and light rail repair mechanics at the Mass Transit Administration in Baltimore. And then here's me today. I've lost a little bit of weight since that picture. It was about a year ago, but that's a little bit of Coach Michael Crumpack for you to laugh and point fingers, and it's all good. It's all good. But I'm so glad that you guys are happy today, or at least I'm happy today that you're joining me. And I wanted to just kind of go through and talk about like why the heck we're here today. So let me just ask this, and I don't know if you want to answer in the chat pod or if you'd like to just open your microphone and share, but I'm just kind of curious, like, why the heck did you sign up and why are you here? So who would like to share?
I don't mind jumping in. This is Stephanie. Michael and I went to high school together.
Thanks.
I am, it's a hard description for me, but I wouldn't say leader by default, but I started in my company and I was the only one in my department. And now there are 15 of us, I think.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
I share some leadership roles with another gentleman here, and we have very distinct different tasks. So it's, it's dealing with conflict, it's dealing with problems, it's dealing with, ways to maximize folks. And I'm just looking for anything and everything that will help me improve. So for me, it's sort of learning as I go, and I'm a forever learner. I have a very curious brain, so this is wonderful for me.
Nice. Thank you, Stephanie. I love the fact that you're a forever learner. And yeah, like whether you, like my definition of a leader is we're all leaders. If you don't manage people, then you manage yourself. You have to lead yourself. There's opportunities where you could hopefully make good choices and be a role model for others. And those of you like Stephanie that work with some other people, some other teams, have conflict resolution, it's during those times when the people around you really need support that you really have an opportunity to flex your leadership and kind of move into that. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing. Would anyone else like to share? Deanna, I saw that you said that you were interested. You always strive to be a better leader. I don't know if you want to open up your mic and just share like a couple extra things if you feel comfortable.
I've just had experience with a lot of different leaders at different companies, and it's funny how people get put into leadership but have no skills and don't know how to lead or how to manage people. And so it's an interesting topic for me because I've seen it happen many times. And I always try to be more encouraging, working with my team and very open with my team. And a lot of people are not like that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's great to have curiosity, and yeah, you're in the right place. And my thought is a lot of the research that's out there talks about here's what you need to do as a leader. These are the things that are considered good leadership. But throughout my journey with leadership, I've learned so much of what not to do just by looking at people around me that I don't know if they've necessarily derailed, but they've had some hiccups. And we're going to talk through some of those hiccups. Elon Musk is all over the media lately. He's made a couple hiccups, and I really feel that there's some really important things that we can learn to make ourselves better. And I think Janelle said in the chat something about my book. Yes, like I'm writing this book, and it's called Why Smart Leaders Do Stupid Things, Lessons Learned from Lousy Leaders. And it's like, it's been something that's bubbling for years and years and years. I have this little notepad in my phone and I jot down things. And I recently joined a writing group in January, and I'm kind of putting the finishing touches of my book, and it'll be out next year sometime. And kind of the thought is, there's legendary leaders, which are those leaders that we tend to acknowledge, those of us that do some amazing things. And then there's also those leaders that, you know, I know this is a little direct and I'm not trying to be judgy or anything, but those leaders that are just lousy, and either they're lousy because they make mistakes that they don't know, they have blind spots, they're lousy because they have a high ego, they're lousy because they like a lot of attention, whatever it is. And I think it's really important. I don't think anyone here would raise their hand and say, you know what, Michael, I am a lousy leader. But there's times when we're under stress, when we're overwhelmed, that left unchecked, it can become a really challenging opportunity for not only you, but those around you. So I think looking at these lessons from other people can really help us become better leaders. And for those of you that feel so inclined to stick around until the end, I have a new package, and I'll tell you about it a little bit later, but it's a 10-week challenge that's designed to help you uncover some blind spots, put together some quick goals, and have a couple really good quick wins. So I'll tell you a little bit about that program. It's a combination of like self-study, some assessments, some executive coaching, and one lucky participant today will walk away with a freebie. And I have a couple other freebies I'll share with you later. So before we go any further, my assistant extraordinaire, Shane, who has been pulling all-nighters for the last couple days, which I really appreciate, he's here. If you have any questions, and I'm not monitoring that in the chat, feel free to reach out to Shane, or also Team Crumpack is here. That's another chat pod. But Shane, I'm going to ask if you could bring up our first poll. And I'm just kind of curious, like, who are you? Are you a business leader? Are you a business owner or an entrepreneur? Do you lead others, like typically a manager, senior manager, maybe a team lead, like it sounds like Stephanie was? Are you a leader of leaders, a director, an executive, a chief, whatever officer? Or are you someone that supports leadership development? Maybe you're an HR, or maybe you just lead yourself. And if you have no idea if any of those pertain to you, then you know what, you can select other. So I'll give you about 5 more seconds. It looks like about 18 of you, about 10 more of you. If you could answer the poll, that would be wonderful. Dima, good to see you. A couple other people joined. Thank you. Pamela is here also. I didn't notice you before. Welcome. So, all right, so why don't we end the poll and we will display the results. This is pretty well distributed today. So it looks like the majority of you are like in the manager, so leading others, which is so important. And I think it was Deanna before that talked about this. So many leaders are being just thrown into a manager role for the first time. They're not given the training, they're not given the support, they're not given the guidance. And I think there's a lot of opportunities today just because the terrain out there is just so challenging that we really, really need that core solid manager group. So it's great to see that 27% of you make up the manager group. Leader of, or I'm sorry, 27% make up the executive group. And then also 27%, looks like he's changed a little bit, lead others. We have 18% of you are entrepreneurs, 18% lead yourself. And then we have 9% others. So 2 of you said that you were others. If you wouldn't mind maybe sharing in the chat, I'm just kind of curious, like what category would you classify yourself in, or what do you fall in? Cornell, thank you. Cornell and I worked at Chewy together. So yeah, I feel like this is like a reunion. It's so crazy. Okay, so Jimmy is like an executive coach, so that would fall into others. Great. Well, let me just say we have a really, and I'm not just like blowing smoke, but we have a really good group of people today. I'm so excited that everyone's here. A little bit later, we're going to break out into some breakout groups, and it'll be an opportunity for you to share some more of your insights, more of your ideas. And also, I don't know about you, but I've like formed some great relationships with complete strangers that I've been thrown into breakout groups with. So I just encourage you to participate and engage with them. And like I said, if you feel comfortable, you can turn your camera on. So let's go to a chat exercise. So let's start at the bright side of leadership. So I know the topic today is talking about lousy leaders, but let's think of the best leader that you've ever worked with. Can you share a little bit of what made them a great leader in the chat pod? And I'll share an example of like one of the best leaders that I worked for. This is a time, this was 98, I think. I was working at US Airways, and they're like, Michael, I want you to sit through 6 weeks of flight attendant training, which I'm like, okay, and figure out how we can make it more customer focused, because at that time it was all about safety. There wasn't a lot of service. So I actually did this audit. I had 2 other people on my team, and I was in a training or doing training in New York City. And this is before cell phones were even like really available. But someone knocked in the training room and they're like, your VP wants to see you in 3 hours in DC. And she wants a complete update on everything that you've learned from this training audit, what the recommendations are, and what you think some next steps are. And I'm like, holy heck, I've never spoken to a VP before. I never put together a presentation for an executive. And for some reason, I felt she saw the potential that I did not see in myself. So I hopped on a plane, went to DC, delivered a presentation to the VP, ended up getting a promotion a few months later, and it was so great. So for me, it's those leaders that really push people in a healthy way, not in a stressful way, but in a very healthy way to accomplish more. And there's a great book out there that talks about multipliers, one of my favorite topics. And it's like, multipliers are leaders that can actually see the potential in others and then actually help them develop more cognitive ability, learn more skills, actually become smarter and more effective than they actually are. And I think that's just a really good example. So let's go to the chat pod. Thank you guys for playing along with me. So Tom said he has a leader that believed in him, supportive. Yeah, getting out of your comfort zone. I think that's a really important quality. I like to say, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And if you're very comfortable where you are, that might be okay, but sometimes that can be a challenging thing, and it's an opportunity to kind of push yourself. So find people that do that. Janelle said, Steve, Janelle, would you mind opening up your mic and just talking a little bit about the leader? Because I know, and just to, well, I'll let you introduce yourself, Janelle. I don't want to take any of your thunder, but it looks like this is a pretty good story of a leader.
See if I can get this chat out of the way. The video is on, isn't it? Yes, it's just not showing up. My chat is eating up all of my monitor space here. Yeah, Steve Piersanti, who is the man who founded Barrett Kohler Publishers, some people may know him from this group. I had total trust in him, which hurt sometimes because some of the trust that he gave me was not real complimentary always.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, but I could trust it, and I always responded to it. And then when he gave me positive feedback, it really was very nice as well, you can imagine. But I watched him with all the other people at Barrett Kohler, and they loved him. He's a very religious man, and he always started off all of our meetings and calls with a little prayer or a moment of silence. He used to call them a moment of prayer, but now they've become a moment of silence over the years. And there was something that was just so settling, because it was always I was always a little bit on edge talking with him. So just to find that centered space in me and then open my eyes, and then he and I would talk, it was a little, it's just a technique, but I think it reflected who Steve Piersanti is as a person. Everybody's grown around him, and the business Barrett Kohler has grown as well as a result of that. He's no longer head of the organization. He's on the board though, but he's dropping out of that. But it's been an honor to work with him.
Yeah. And Janelle, what would you say is his top leadership quality that you notice? It sounds like there's a couple things going on there.
Yeah. Well, he played a variety of roles, but he's a really good listener. I see that in you too, Michael. I must say.
Thank you. I'll give you
Really,
money
he
later.
was a really good listener, and he was very organized. I mean, our meetings, if they were going to be 15 minutes long, they were 15 minutes long. That was it. And the process of getting to know him was a really good experience as well. I kind of suspected who he was. When we had our first quiet 5 minutes, and then it followed through. He so honors human beings. He's a real people first kind of person. I'd say that's probably his best attribute. But he knows the business. There is no question about it. He knows the publishing business.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you. So good listener, able to embody that reflection, the moment of silence to kind of get people centered and grounded before you work. And sounds like someone very supportive. So great. Thank you for sharing that. There's some good stuff in the chat pod here. Let's see. Kimberly, the best leader I worked for was a showroom manager that worked for the corporation straight out of college, worked her way up through the company, had experience at every level, understood what each job entailed, had empathy. So kind of similar to what Janelle said, you have the business expertise, which I say is kind of like the back wheels of the car. And then you have like the leadership components, which is the front wheel or the strategic part. And you can have the great skills that you want in the back, but if you're not steering correctly and listening and using empathy, your car is gonna get into an accident. So some good examples. So thank you guys for sharing that. So now let's go to the dark side. Bum, bum, bum. So how about the worst leader that you've ever experienced? And let me give you one of my examples. This is like when I was 18. So I told you I was in a call center. We were working until midnight, and I was like the only one left on the phones. And my supervisor, let's call her Kim, she came over and she said, I would like you to clock out, Michael, and I just need you to get 2 more sales. Not only will you make your $30 bonus for the week, but everybody that worked on that project the whole week is also going to get the bonus. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I clocked out, went back, got the sale, got all this like praise and attention, was really good. And then a couple of days later, the VP came to me and she's like, has any supervisor ever asked you to clock out and then go back on and do that? And like, not only is that like illegal in terms of like labor laws, but it's like unethical. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be fired. I shouldn't have done that. I remember going home that night, driving, kind of feeling icky about it. And it's just like, because that person was in a level of authority, because it was like one of my first jobs, I sort of did it. And I felt badly for it. And I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but that person was no longer with the company a few days later. So that's one of like the first examples of a bad leader that I had. How about you guys? What are some examples that you have? Christy, no coaching support, let you fail without telling you, oh, I hate the leaders that ghost you and just expect you to figure it out or just churn and burn. Cornell, leading by intimidation. Yeah, we're going to get into that. Let's see, Melissa, 2 people, not good leaders, either one of them, made promises that they didn't keep. Yeah, definitely some really yelling, screaming, scolding in public. Oh my gosh. I remember in grade school, my teacher would dump everyone's belongings in their desk on the floor whenever we had like a messy desk. And I'm like, how did they get away from that? And then they would paddle people in the hallway. It was kind of crazy. But so yeah, so we have all like experienced really bad leadership. And it's interesting, even if you think back like 5-10 years ago, some things that you thought were okay are no longer okay today. So it's like over time, we evolve as people, we evolve as leaders. And I think it's really important to be in tune with that. Kimberly said egomaniac, poor communication, jealous, envious, a couple of people talking about bullies, very confusing. Yeah, it's just so unfortunate. So why are we looking at lousy leadership? Like I said, people look at positive leadership, and I think there's some missed opportunities. So that's really the purpose of today, is to identify some of these opportunities. And my hope is that you'll walk away with one or two things that either you can think about and reflect to make yourself a better leader, or perhaps you might be able to coach or communicate with other people that you're like, oh, this person is a horrible leader. So not only are we going to talk about some of these problems, but hopefully we'll generate some ideas of what do you do if you have someone who isn't a good listener, or is bullying people, or has a high ego. So let's do another poll if we could, Shane. And this one is like thinking about the lousy leaders you've worked with. How many of them have you worked with? Is it less than 10%, between 10 and 25, 26 to 50, 51 to 75, or over 75? So how many lousy leaders, unfortunately, have you worked with? Okay, we have about 40% of you who responded, 50, 60, there we go. 75, let's get to 80 and then we'll close this bad boy. Okay, 81%. So we'll give you 3 more seconds. Perfect. Okay, this is interesting. I did this webinar a couple months ago. I volunteer with the Small Business Administration, and the results were pretty similar. It was like, I think it was 65% between 10 and 25%. So between 1 in every, what is that, like 4 people that you work with, they're ineffective, like 1 to 10, no, 3 to 10. Obviously I'm not a math major, that's why my undergrad was in business and organizational communication, which was business without the math. But so anyways, most of you, 60% of you said between 10 and 25%. And then it looks like right behind that we have less than 10%, 16%, and then 12%, 26 to 50. Okay, great. Thank you guys for showing that. It's just kind of interesting to see like how much of these are a challenge for that. So I'm going to share with you an ethical dilemma. I do not want you to type your answer. I don't want you to scream or anything. This is just like a personal exercise right now. So I want you to think about if you knew of a lady that was pregnant. She had 8 children, 3 were deaf, 2 were blind, 1 was mentally retarded, she had syphilis. Would you recommend that she have an abortion? And I know this is like the wrong time for this question. This is an exercise that I did in ethical leadership. And I think it's really important to think about that. So hold on to that. It's either yes or no. You don't need to share it with anyone. And let me give you kind of the second part to this here. So here is the vote. You have the deciding vote. And if you've done this exercise before, don't share. But you need to elect the next world leader. Candidate A associates with crooked politicians and consults astrologers. He's had 2 mistresses, chain smokes and drinks up to 10 martinis a day. Candidate B, ejected from the office twice. No, this is not a recent president. Sleeps until noon, used opium, drinks large amounts of whiskey every evening. Candidate C, a decorated war hero, a vegetarian, doesn't smoke, drinks occasionally, and has not had any extramarital affairs. So in the chat pod, and I'm going to ask you to share if you feel comfortable. Who would you vote for? Candidate A, candidate B, or candidate C? Ooh, a couple people want the vegetarian. Anyone else? Another C, another C, another C. Okay. Why did you guys pick C? Okay, Cornell, thank you. Throwing me an A. CE is bad. C is bad. Why did you guys pick C? Feels like a trick question, but C. Yeah, it kind of is a trick question.
Too good to be true. There's no way.
Too
that's a
good to be true.
person.
Oh my
There's just
God.
no way.
Gosh, this is like the SAT here.
I would like to know what
Actually,
their policies are.
candidate A was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, candidate B, and candidate C was Adolf Hitler. Interesting, right? And if you said yes to the abortion question, you just killed Beethoven. So just a little icebreaker for you. So it's not like this is a really controversial topic, but I do want to say the invitation for today is to explore and not judge. And I'm not saying that anyone is like inherently all bad or anyone is inherently all good. There's these shades of gray. And typically what happens is some of the good people that exhibit this great leadership, whenever they are stressed. So what is stress? They're tired, they're fatigued, they're overwhelmed with too much work. They haven't received enough sleep. They can't say no to things. They're drinking, like whatever it is, like those things create stress. And typically that's where lousy leadership can rear its head if you don't monitor yourself and bring yourself back to center. So all that to say, as humans, we're all multifaceted. Moral judgments are all subjective. We all have pressures. And really, there's no right or wrong. Well, there is a right or wrong, but there's different degrees of that. So again, I'm not trying to say, let's like throw people under the bus and make judgments and accusation. Like, for example, one of the leaders that I want to talk through a little bit is Vladimir Putin. And I read kind of an article from someone saying he's a great leader in Russia, he's protecting Russia, he's doing all these things. And it's like, you know what, that's a really interesting perspective. So it all depends on the audience and it depends on kind of who the person is. But I just want to invite you today to explore and hopefully not judge. So what is leadership? You've kind of talked about this. It's being able to think strategically, not just, oh my gosh, there's a fire drill, I need to do something today, but what are the things that you need to be thinking about now that actually will not become a reality until the future? It's about vision setting, goal setting, making good decisions, positive intelligence, emotional intelligence, and strategic thinking. So now let's go to the dark side of leadership. And like I said, selfishly, I am writing a book. Man, that's a little QR code if you want to know anything about me, how to get a hold of me, how to book a meeting. I have freebies, all that. I'll send you this deck, snap away, and you'll have access to that. But if you have some stories that you would like to share with me confidentially, I'm collecting a few more stories for my book, and I would love to have it. I promise I'll change the names, I'll change the gender, I'll change the company, I'll combine a couple stories, and I will not associate you with that. But I would love to hear, what are some of those crazy things? And it was funny, I was talking to a friend about writing this book, and I outlined like 20 things that I saw in HR, and he's like, I cannot believe that you experienced all these things. I'm like, you're kidding me. I'm like, you know, I thought everyone kind of had this. So we've all seen those amazing stories and sometimes painful stories of what really bad leadership looks like. And I would love to hear your perspective. So for today, if you're able to, keep your cameras on. I see like 2 or 3 of you right now. I get it. We're busy, but it's great, especially when you get to the breakout groups. It's good for you to kind of see everybody and participate. But the ground rules I have been talking about forever: confidentiality. I don't think anyone's going to throw anyone under the bus. candor, I really like invite you to say, hey, Michael, I agree with this, or Michael, this is crap. I don't think this is ever going to happen. Like, be direct and be honest. The more that we can have a great conversation with each other, the more hopefully you will learn some things. So that's a little bit about kind of the purpose and the goals. And let's talk about the leadership state today. How many of you, either a yes or no, think that the world and the expectations of leaders today is significantly different than it was, let's say, pre-pandemic? So yes or no? Is it the same? Is it changed? What do you think? Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. And it's interesting. A lot of people today are semi-remote. A lot of people are asking for a lot of flexibility. I mean, they've proven that they can work from home, they can get work done. So the role of a manager is different. Like, how do you manage your team if you can't walk down the hall and see them or address a problem? And leaders are being expected to not only help manage the work, but also manage and actually lead the people. So a big thing that we hear is leaders as, this is an overstatement. I know we have some mental health professionals in the house, but leaders as mental health professionals. So people that, like, Janelle and some other people shared, are good listeners, have empathy. If someone brings something that you're like, oh, I can't believe that they're bringing it, seek to understand and try to understand what is actually behind the problem or situation. So there's a lot of innovation. Like, how many of you, like, show of hands or just a yes in the chat, how many of you have used artificial intelligence for something in the last 30 days? And I will be shamelessly honest, like the sample of my book, that was not created by an artist. I had Jasper create it, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. I'm gonna kind of use it. So there's so many tools out there, and as a leader, part of your role is to understand what is the technology that's out there and how can you tap into that to do your job more effectively, and how can those on your team actually use some of those tools as well. So people are asking for a lot more communication. Everyone's using Slack and Zoom and all these things. And really, leaders have a big challenge of how do you create engagement. So not just giving people what they need to do their job, but giving people opportunities, stretch opportunities. So good. Thank you guys for sharing your experience with AI. Some of you guys, I did this study during COVID where I talked to 100 people for like 15 minutes. And I said, what are the biggest challenges? And I have a YouTube channel. If you want to hear the webinar, great. If not, no worries here. But these are the challenges that both individual contributors and leaders said that they had. They have to create an environment that is really engaging. They have to demonstrate polarity management, which is not like focusing on one thing and getting it 100%. So I need to have high quality, but I also have to have 0 defects. Well, it's really difficult to achieve like 100% of that. So how do you manage those polarities and flex when you need to adapt? Leading change, being flexible and resilient, providing very honest feedback. I know some people have recently read like Radical Candor. It's a couple years old, but there's like some really good books out there about providing feedback, presenting virtually. Like even today, like I don't say that I'm like the greatest virtual presenter, but there's people that like, are having like an unmade bed or people walking behind. It's just all this crazy stuff. And it's like the challenges today as a leader is like, how do you show up as best as you can? And how do you dive into opportunities where you can develop? So a lot of these challenges are also about managing time and resources and being very strategic. A lot of the coaching clients that I have, and I don't know if some of the other coaches on the call share the same thing, but it's so easy to get hung up in all the technical things and the tactical things that have to happen each day. And it's hard to pause and do things that you're not going to see the bang for the buck tomorrow. It may take a couple months, maybe even a couple years. So trying to be more strategic. And then also a big thing, I mean, this labor market keeps going up and down, and quiet quitters, and like, it's really challenging for leaders today. So it's important to be in touch with those things. And I just want to commend you guys of taking 90 minutes out of your day to focus on leadership. So let's go into some of these examples here. And I'm going to ask for you to maybe open up your microphone and share. So I have a couple examples of leaders, and I want to talk about what the story is, what was kind of lousy, and what are the lessons learned. So we'll do a few of these together, and then I have an exercise for you to do in some breakouts, just to give you an opportunity to hopefully take some really good ideas and some learning from today. But before I move on, I just want to do a time check. It's like about quarter till top of the hour. Any questions, comments, feedback, anything? I just want to kind of pause for a second to see if there's anything we can do more of, less of, or how's the pace, like any comments or so. I think it's good just to kind of check in and see how's it going. So you can give me a thumbs up if it's okay. If there's something else that you have to do, let me know. Okay, good so far, and someone is going to leave. Okay, I won't take it personally. So I told you about the time card person that I worked with, Kim. So the lesson learned for me was, like, when someone's asking you to do something that makes you feel a little bit icky, like asking questions like, why are you asking me to do that? Am I allowed to do that? Are there some other people around me that I could kind of bounce that off of? So it's not just like realizing the lousy things that people do, but it's thinking like, what can we do to make those things like not so lousy, or how can we uncover some blind spots that we have? So this is a great quote from Warren Bennis. The manager does the right things, the manager does things right. The leader does the right things. So things right, I come to work at the right time. I file my TPS reports on time. I check all the boxes. But the leader is someone that's thinking beyond like the tactical, more of the strategic. And so part of the importance of like looking at leadership, both from like the bright side and the dark side, is looking at what are the differences between leadership and management. So leadership is typically, that's what I call like the front wheels of a car. It's influencing. Okay, I asked for something and I was told no. I want a promotion. I want a raise. I want to get into that new team. I want to volunteer. I want to have some vacation time, whatever it is, like influencing others, inspiring others, setting vision and motivating, and realizing that different people like to be motivated for different reasons. Some of us might like money, some of us might like flexibility, some of us might like some time off, whatever it would be. And then the other side of management is more of the planning, the tactical, the organizing. And I think it's really important to balance both of those sides. And for me in my practice, I talk a lot about leadership, and I probably use the word leadership more than I should. But part of being a leader is knowing when you need to kind of relinquish control and to, bring in some other people. And there's times, in order to be an effective leader, you have to be actually a good manager as well. And Jimmy, I see your hand. Do you want to share a point?
Yeah, it's exactly what you were just saying there is, if to be a great leader, you ought to be a great manager, because if you're not able to, you can come up with all these wild ideas, but then how do you harness that and turn that into an actual work product? So, we always try to say leadership versus management, or, it's, stop being a manager and start being a leader. Well, some of us can be leaders and are in a position to do that. Others are tasked with being a manager. Can you sprinkle in leadership attributes? Sure. But if you can't plan, can't organize, can't leverage resources, direct others, or achieve goals, then how much of a leader can you be? So
Yeah.
I think you got to have both, and it'd be great to see, more of a leader or a coaching management is really to me, the sweet spot.
Yeah, yeah. What do other people think? I mean, in the chat pod, or if anyone wants to open up um their microphone. But I think that you have to have the management skills. It's almost like a ticket to entry. You can't be a hot mess and be an effective leader. You have to be able to plan and organize. But as you progress throughout your career, I can do a to-do list when I was the janitor of my church, which was my first job, honestly. But now that I'm like running a business and working with partners and everything, like you have to like raise the bar. So it constantly evolves over time. So I think, to Jimmy's point, it's a delicate dance between leading and managing. And the point is to find the right blend that makes you thrive and helps you accomplish your goals, motivate your team, and get really good results. And, it's not rocket surgery, but there's so much stuff that just gets in the way that can become incredibly challenging. So let's go through just a little bit deeper before a breakout. And some of the other characteristics of legendary leaders, people that are authentic, people that are inspirational, people that are fair, people that are resilient. One of the, I think, most important things as a coach, and something that I work on with a lot of my clients, are how quickly can you get over something, learn from it, and move on. And there's some people that have a mistake and they like have all this like negative self-doubt and self-talk, and they just like stir on it for time and time. Those leaders that are really, really out of the box, strategic, highly effective, I noticed that like whenever there's a setback, they can get over it and move on. What did I learn from it? How can I make that learning become an action plan so I don't make those mistakes again? And how do I share that learning with others? So I think resiliency is super important. Anything else that you think we should add to this list in the chat pod? Leadership versus management. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm just looking at some of these chats.
I would say, this is Stephanie again, I would say, touching on exactly what you just described, but from a employee standpoint, I've got folks that spin and spin and spin on things, and one little thing sends them on this huge mountain of things from months and months ago that seemed resolved and aren't. So I would say, as a leader in this department, that's something that I'm looking for, is ways to help folks move past those things and really flourish, because I think they get stuck.
Yeah, yeah. And that's so important, not just you as a leader, but how do you work with your team so they can kind of get over things and become a little bit more resilient, can learn from it, and there's not so much conflict. So gosh, it's such a big job as a leader. You have to like lead yourself and be aware of everything that's going on with you, plus pay attention to your team, figure out what the individuals need. And if people are getting stuck and, are just in a painful spot, like how do you coach them, guide them, give them direction while appealing to their style? So it's a really, really, really big job. Alex said integrity and intellectual honesty. Good. Thank you, Alex. Christy, give people a chance, giving opportunities to grow. Yeah. Yeah, giving people stretch assignments. Like you can do the job in a half hour, but let someone learn it for 8 hours, and then eventually they're going to be able to do it in a half hour so that you can focus on more strategic activities. Good. So the lousy leadership, let's go back and look at that again. Narcissism, fear, high ego, confrontational, micromanaging. And again, some of these may not always be 100% I'm a micromanager, but for whatever reason, you get tired, you get stressed, something doesn't go your way, your low resiliency that day can really open a door to, some bad behaviors. How many of you, show of hands, have seen the movie, I almost said Dreamgirls, but Mean Girls? Mean Girls. It's written by Tina Fey, one of my favorite comedians. Stephanie knows what I'm talking about. But so the main character in Mean Girls is Regina. And it's basically she's in charge of this clique. Like they make everyone wear pink on certain days. Like you can't sit here unless you're part of the group. And it's a classic example of like bullying and having this clique. And it's this clique mentality. So she's known for lying, for cheating, for betraying people. They create this like burn book of all like the secrets that the class has. And it's just, it's such a funny movie. And you know, I did a post about this, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. And I thought there's just so many lessons that we can learn. And I remember I took a job, I won't tell you where it is. I was like the new guy. And I remember the whole team would go out to lunch every Friday and they would never invite me. And I'm like, okay, why am I not like part of this group? Like it could just be the legacy thing. So there's some learning in there about, you know, trying to be empathetic, trying to be open, trying to understand things. So I thought that Mean Girls is just kind of a funny example and a great movie if you have time to look into it. So let's talk about a slippery slope. I don't think any leader wakes up and says, you know what, I am going to be a lousy leader today. But it's like little things that happen over time, left unchecked, can really cause us to derail. And some of the things are, it's like, okay, everyone's doing it. You know, my mom used to tell me, oh, okay, if your friend jumped off a bridge, would you too? And, you know, obviously that's a little extreme, but over time, cultures can become toxic when behavior left unchecked becomes kind of like the common thing to do. Like, let's all have a conflict. Let's all have an argument. Let's like not promote diversity or inclusion or ideas. So it's a slippery slope, and it's little things over time can really lead to a big blow up. And I'm going to skip over a couple slides because I want to get to this. How many of you have ever watched Ellen DeGeneres? Any fans in the house, either in chat? I have to admit, I haven't watched her that much. I think like maybe some YouTube stuff, or if I was, you know, home for a sick day, I would look at it. But so here's a situation, and I'm telling you about this because I want to tee up this next part, which is all about power bases. And so here's what happened. So Ellen, you know, the nice lady on camera, there were rumors that her producer was sexually harassing people. She was in meetings when people were belittling each other and demonstrating this toxic work environment. And the rumor is like she did not do anything about it. And all of a sudden, things kind of caught up with her. And when she came back on the air for, I believe, her final season, she did this apology, and totally recommend that you do it. And like, if you take out all the funny jokes and everything, it was a really effective, sincere apology. But she made so many jokes that the criticism was that she didn't really believe it. She would say things like, oh, you know, I've heard this, or I hear people are saying that it's a toxic behavior and one might take control. Like, she completely did not own the situation. And I don't know about you, but I think her public apology really derailed her, and she lost, like, she was on TV like 25 years or so. Is a long, long time. But have any of you heard anything about Ellen or anything else that you want to kind of share with that experience? Am I wrong, or do you have a different perspective? Agreed. Thank you, Matt.
It almost seemed like she had a different personality persona on screen than what was behind the scenes, is what it sounded like. What you saw in public was not what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and how interesting is that? And, you know, going back to lessons learned by lousy leaders, how many of you have seen leaders that, you know, when they're in a meeting room, they're in front of everybody, they're like so buttoned up and polished. And then, you know, when they're outside of that room, like the spotlight's not on them, there's these toxic qualities that really come out. So I just thought it was interesting. These are actual Twitter comments. I grayed out the names of the person, but just an example of someone that Like people just abuse their power, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. So speaking of power, let's take a look at these power bases. So these are just things that we should recognize. So there's coercive power, which is, I'm going to do physical force. If you don't do this, you're not going to get a raise. You're not going to get a bonus. You're not going to get a promotion. There's a reward power. You go fire this person and then I'll give you a promotion. There's legitimate power, which is like, okay, a cop pulls you over in a police car in a uniform. Just, you don't know that person, but just the fact that they're a person of the law, like you honestly, try to respect, or they have like a level of legitimate power. Then there's the expert power. And I think this is like the most important one. It doesn't matter your title. It doesn't matter where you work. It's what you show up. It's the knowledge, it's the skills, it's the education, it's the experience that you have. And I think that's super, super important to pay attention to. And then there's like the Kardashian power, which is referent power or role model, your celebrity spokesperson, things like that. Someone who is admired, someone who's a strong leader, they give an endorsement. So Matt, I see your hand. I don't know if there's a comment you'd like to share.
I just wanted to touch on, with power and going back to, the story of Ellen. I think, she started from the bottom as a stand-up comic and, had to start at all those small rooms. And as she got bigger, her power increased. And I think as your power increases, you have to stay true to yourself and stay true to all these characteristics that, got you in that position and that makes you who you are as a good leader. And I think it's important to kind of reflect on kind of who you are as your power increases.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most profound points today. It's like over time, things kind of creep up. What is it you do over time when you get promoted, you advance in your career, you get a lot of recognition, you get, the fancy car, the nice house, whatever. What are some things that can help you stay focused and grounded? And Elizabeth, I see your hand.
Well, I'd like to go back and just do a follow-up comment. When Ellen got started, as the gentleman said, she got started in small clubs and all that. But one of the things I think was so confounding and so complicating of the response of what we heard was going on behind the scenes once she had made it big, was that she started out and faced so much adversity herself and publicly stood up for other gay and lesbian actors and actresses and took a lot of risk very publicly and seemingly very humble and trying to just be recognized. And then the thing was, she was rewarded and ended up, her career grew and grew. And so she gained such a huge following, right? So her power, which was nothing in the beginning, grew and grew and grew, and she had so much power. But what was, I think, so confusing was that somewhere along the way, other people who didn't have the power, she forgot kind of everything that she went through, or maybe she didn't and just didn't have the skills to know how to be accepting of all of her staff and let people speak freely and not make fun of people. I don't know what happened, but I'm confused by how, of all people, how could Ellen have been leading in such a mean way? And I think, and I know that in my own life, as an employee, I've had the same thing where I've come into a job and I'm cheerful, I'm excited to be there, people seem glad to have me, I get great reviews, and then little by little, you kind of get siphoned off to the side and you realize there's an us and a them, and you're not in the them. So there's some gradual shift that can happen over time where people's blind spots set in, or people have complacency that sets in, or fatigue sets in, where they forget to account that the people around your table are not just your team, but they all come with unique gifts and talents and strengths and insecurities. And I don't know. Anyway, I've said what I want to say. Did I make it?
Yeah. No, I think that's important. It's like, I feel like Ellen, you know, she started out as a stand-up comic at a tiny little venue, and then all of a sudden she's like #1 on daytime talk shows. It's like, she didn't take those people with you, and she like became like self-absorbed and self-centered. And you know, I'm not a clinical psychologist, but like a little narcissistic. And I remember them doing this like behind the scenes show with her, and she would like jump on people and like scare them. And I'm like, that's like just really crazy. And I'm like, that's a little toxic. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I always even think she's so nice. It's like, and I guess on her show, like that was her thing. She would like scare people. And I'm like,
Yeah.
my gosh, what if someone had a weak heart or something like that?
Yeah. I never thought that was very funny.
Yeah, Kimberly, I see your hand. Would you mind sharing?
Yeah, I get everyone else's point, and I understand we don't all know the backstory with Ellen, and probably never will, because there's always their story, our story, and the truth.
Right.
But I find it interesting that we talk about women in leadership in a different way. I'm sorry, I don't remember the lady's name who just spoke, talking about her being mean. And, you know, it's like, oh no, we can't have women being mean. You know, we don't work, you know, when we talked about Hitler earlier, or we talked about Roosevelt, you know, it's like, we don't talk about men in leadership roles the same way we do about women. And I don't think we give women the same grace and I don't know, just space to be human beings, where we're so much more critical of them. You know, like the Mean Girls. We don't have a movie about mean boys, and there's plenty of mean boys. So I just think that there's a lot of misogyny in leadership and what we expect of women versus men. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And thank you, Kimberly, for bringing that up. There are a lot of gender differences between males and females. And I know that statistically, females get more feedback about their personality at work. You're being too crass, you're being too assertive, whatever. Males tend to get more feedback on their results or their performance, more tactical things. And I was just thinking, what happens if, like, who's a male talk show host, like Donahue or Geraldo Rivera? What was his name? Geraldo, or who's the guy that was the mayor?
Rivera.
Yeah. So if it was a male that did that, it's like, would it be such a controversy? And that's a really, really interesting perspective that actually I didn't think too much about that. And I'm wondering how this kind of falls into that. So yeah, I think gender differences are very, very interesting. And as a male, it's like, I probably don't see things, and other males probably don't see it, compared to the women that have to like overly work and prove themselves. And, you know, it's tougher to get ahead. So really interesting perspective. So thank you for sharing that. And that tees us nicely into our next poll. So Shane, if you could bring this up. So we talked about these power bases: the coercive, the reward, the legitimate, the expert, the referent. Which of these power bases have you seen the most? What have you seen? Like, I've worked with some people where their title walks into the room before actually they do. Or, you know, I'll tell you this, like I was working with a professor, and she's like, why do you call yourself Coach Crumpack? That seems like you think you're better than other people. And I'm like, actually, it's a marketing thing. And no one calls me Coach. Everyone calls me Michael. But it made me think about, like, is it the title? Is it the thing? And it's like, you know what? The thing about coaching is like, we're all on the same page. Like, let's just vibe and have a conversation. No one's better or no one worse. But I thought that that's kind of an interesting power base to consider. So, okay, so about 50% of you completed the poll, up to 60. Let's get this up a little bit more, and then we will close it. Interesting. Okay, let's go ahead and close it, Shane, please. So can you guys see the results? I love how they change at the last second here. So 41 legitimate power, the CEO, the VP, the police. You know, interesting. I used to do this program called Unconscious Bias. You know, most CEOs at organizations are over 6 feet tall and they're male. Like, isn't that interesting? To the point where there's even a procedure, I think in China, where they break people's knees and stretch them so people can become taller. Like, there's so much of this bias out there that's so interesting. So yeah, the legitimate power just because of your title. And I think people ride on their title and think that they can get away with things because of that. And like, if you look at the Enrons and all these like disasters of people that just thought they were so great, Bernie Madoff, you know, he's, you know, someone that we can talk about later if we have time. So I think that's really interesting, the different types of power. So legitimate power, that's 41%. And then it looks like expert power. I love that. You know, it's personal power. It's your brand. A lot of what we do as coaches is like, what is your brand? What do you want to be known for? What do you show up as? And there's times when our beliefs and our values and our challenges block us from getting forward. And a lot of that is trying to free that. So I think personal power, you know, being authentic, authenticity, being honest, super important. And then what was the lowest? Referent power. Okay, the Kim Kardashian, admired, strong, celebrity endorsement, that type of thing. Okay, great. Has anyone here ever heard of the Stanford prison experiment? So I'm a psych major, so this is the one thing. Elizabeth is shaking her head no. I thought you would have seen that. So this was a legendary experiment. It was done in the basement of a library of Stanford University in 1971. It was done by a social psychologist who is still alive today. I tried to connect with him on LinkedIn, but he did not accept my request. His name is Phil Zimbardo. And the study was designed to investigate how people's behavior and attitudes, just by their roles, by their titles in a social setting, can influence others. And the setting was a prison environment. So they basically took little rooms and put bars on them. They put a sign up that said, "This is the prison." And they did this experiment for over 2 weeks. And basically, the study revealed how quickly and how dramatically people conform to social roles. So everybody in this experiment knew it was an experiment, but the guards were told to humiliate, to belittle, to punish people. And those guards immediately overstepped their boundary. They actually started believing that they had power, and the prisoners actually started to conform to all that. Like, there were like torture, there was abuse, like there's all this like crazy stuff. People had lasting depression and anxiety from that. And so like, what does that mean for lousy leadership? So these findings really draw parallels between the guards in this experiment and the bad leaders of perhaps today's corporations. So basically, if you think these guards created this toxic work environment, like look at Ellen and the toxic work environment that allegedly, you know, people are saying that she created. So what's the point of this? The Stanford prison experiment suggests that, and there's a really good documentary, I think it's on Netflix. They kind of got a little carried away at the end with the story. I won't reveal it, but it's really interesting. I watched it before the webinar. But basically, it suggested that people are susceptible to behaving in ways that are inconsistent with their own values and beliefs when they're placed in these other situations. So people that actually create this toxic environment, like people succumb to it because, I need to feed my kids, I need to buy dog food, I need to pay my mortgage, and like, you know, financial health is more important than like dignity and respect. So it was just a fascinating experiment. Another interesting thing, if you're interested in watching the documentary, I highly encourage you to take a look at. But yeah, it's crazy. And they still talk about this even today. Like, he speaks on the experiment. There's a lot of books and publications and things like that. It's just so interesting. It's so interesting. So let's talk about your favorite and mine, Elon Musk. I do not have a Tesla. I would love to have it. I'm a big airplane and space fan. I love watching the rocket launches and everything. But what do you guys think of Elon in the media these days? Any reactions? Any comments? Let me rephrase that. Is Elon a good leader or a not so good, lousy leader? What do you think? He's bored. Yeah, he has too much money and he's like, oh, what do I do? Let's buy Twitter. Let's go to space. Let's buy a rocket.
Yeah,
But
I don't know if he's a good or a bad leader.
yeah,
I agree with that board comment, might be that. I think,
okay.
he's just a rich, older white guy who is exerting power of being a rich, old white guy. Like, just do whatever I want. It doesn't matter. Let me try something out. The Tesla thing
Yeah,
worked out pretty good. The, Solar City thing kind of worked out all right. I don't know what he's doing with Twitter, but I think he's
yeah,
just, doing what he can because he knows he can.
yeah.
Stirring the pot.
It's like, I don't care. Like, if I don't like something, I'll buy my way out of it. So
I do
yeah,
find
but
it
he's
interesting though that he was able to run Tesla and the other companies, and he thought he could come in and do the same thing with Twitter. And so to me, I think that kind of shows he's not a great leader because he tried to fit the same formula of his leadership or management style into a totally different kind of business and
yeah,
didn't go in and learn from the people that were running it well. So if we want to say a bad leader in that instance, then maybe just because he didn't do the right thing in the way
yeah,
how he could have done better.
yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree 100%. Like he went into the Twitter business, and I'm not a big Twitter person, but he basically made all these decisions and announced all these changes without consulting his leadership team. So it was something about how many tweets or the length or check marks or something. He ended up making a tweet and said, this is changing. And then 4 or 5 hours later, he's like, nope, just kidding. It's going to change to something like this. And then he changed it again. And his internal employees are like, what the heck? Like, why aren't you working with us? Like, we built this brand, we have a process. And the customers were like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah,
And
it's
then
one thing if your lower staff ends up leaving. When your executive team leaves, you're doing something very wrong.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Looking at turnover. Yeah, so it's so interesting. And I think there was just a poll that he did on Twitter, like, should he stay CEO? I promise to follow what the answer is. And majority of people said no. So I don't know. He may be looking for a coach or another opportunity sometime soon. So all right. Well, in the interest of time, I think now would be a really good time to go into our breakout group. So I'm going to ask Shane to get those breakout groups ready. We're going to have about 4 people in a breakout group. And if you want to take a picture of the slide here, just so you have the instructions, this is going to be super fast. So like 5 minutes from by the time that we go there. And it's an opportunity for you to network with some people. I want you to think of a lousy leader. It could be Elon, it could be someone that change the names, that type of thing. Think of 1 or 2 actions or behaviors that is not so legendary. So those lousy things. And then think about the lessons that we can learn from that leader, and how can you as a leader, individual leader, share those. So identify the leader, what's lousy, what would you do differently? So I really invite you to kind of lean in more so on like, what can you do to make sure that this does not happen to others? So Shane, are we ready for the breakout groups? You'll have 5 minutes, you'll get a minute warning, and we should start those pretty soon. Hello, welcome back. I'll just give everyone a second. Would anyone like to do a quick report out? And Alex, I just have to say, you have the coolest background. I love the VW thing.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, since you drew the attention, would you mind doing a little report out from your group?
Well,
You can
yeah,
say no.
okay, I can I kind of talk through. I think basically, one of the key takeaways that it was actually, the last from kind of like the last person who spoke was that, she articulated that, she believes in karma and that people who behave badly, things kind of what comes around goes around. And inevitably that individual or the organization or the enterprise is going to suffer for that.
Mhm.
I think, the other thing that was kind of common was like the theme of like narcissistic behaviors and, just treating people badly and not respectfully.
Yeah.
So I think that, those are that's what kind of comes to mind. But, my learning again from this whole thing is like, I just vowed never to emulate the bad behaviors of those that I've observed, and to make sure that I behave differently in a situation where I have people under my care and leadership.
Nice. Good lessons. Yeah, another reference to the narcissistic stuff. So again, we're not diagnosing people, but just, paying attention to some of those behaviors. Great. How about one other group? Anyone willing to do a quick report out, focusing mostly on like, what are the things that you can do to make sure you don't go down this slippery slope?
So, Michael, our group was talking about not caring about the people and focused on the business and focused on the metrics. There was a couple of great examples of, people threatening violence, people not appreciating that somebody that worked for the company for a long time was injured, and sending the message that we need to hire somebody immediately to replace them without even acknowledge that the person was hurt. So that general lack of interest in the people in the organization.
Mhm.
We were talking about how do you change something like that, and I think we got cut off right at the end, but the impact of people leaving, and when you start, at some point there's a tipping point where there's a recognition that there's a lot of people leaving. And then it also comes down to how valuable that person is to the organization. Sometimes companies are willing to let this person to continue to behave that way because
Yeah.
of what they're bringing to the table, and don't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like putting up with the problem employee just because they're crushing it and bringing in great sales and everything. So yeah, like that's that polarity management of, I need to manage the business, but I also have to manage the people. And sometimes it's easy to shift a little bit too far into one of those. So great. All right, so we have about 3 minutes left. Thank you guys for participating in that. Let me go back to sharing my screen if you can. Can you see the right version of my screen here? Okay. Okay, so just to kind of summarize like what we have here, if you think of all the themes from the people that we've talked about, self-awareness is a really important theme. Communication is one of the themes as well. Empathy is another part. Decision-making and adaptability. So if you kind of boil all these down and did like a factor analysis and looked at that, these are some of the areas where leaders tend to have some blind spots. And I wanted to just kind of go through, and if those of you that need to drop off in a couple of minutes, so please free to do that. But I wanted to talk to you about an opportunity and an invitation that I have to try out a 6-week challenge, and a 10-week challenge. A lot of us as leaders are really having a hard time recognizing some of these blind spots, leading change. We heard a lot of examples of, like, from Stephanie, trying to engage with my team, build teams, manage conflict. And there's a lot of things that happen if we don't take a minute and focus on our development. So relationships can deteriorate, team productivity can decrease, stress can go from sort of that dark side of leadership. And overall, like, our reputation and our brand deteriorates a little bit. And the new reality with any type of development, and whether it's with myself as a coach or Jimmy as a coach or any coaches here, is that coaching is a way to help you uncover some blind spots and to have a very safe environment where you can say anything, really, no judgment, no critique. It's an opportunity for you to receive like unbiased and third-party support. So we have a winner of this package that I have just put together, and this is the first time I've done that. So it's a 10-week challenge. It's from blind spots to insight, and it's crushing your goals to achieve full potential. And I'll tell you who the winner is in just a minute. But who is this for? It's for anyone that is stuck, but like you're motivated, like you want to get to the next level, you want to crush through something, you want a breakthrough, you're willing to make an investment in yourself. And I think 10 weeks is like a good duration to actually have a couple breakthroughs. And there's some typos on here, but anyways, so it's anyone who's stuck and motivated and wants to do something. And I have a famous quote that I really love, and it's "a wish is not a goal." And so many people that we interact with say things like, oh, like, I wish I could do more, or I wish I could accomplish something better. But really, someone who keeps setting goals is someone who's really going to crush it. And they're gonna, the person who's the know-it-all leader or the defensive leader, you think you got it, I'm way too comfortable with who I am. Those are the people that are not really focused. So let me just kind of cut to the chase here. So the outcomes that in this 10-week, and then I'll talk you a little bit, give me like one more minute and then we'll wrap up. But so what's part of this challenge are 2 brand new assessments that will uncover blind spots and challenge opportunities. You'll get a 10-week plan specific to you and your ideas. And my commitment to you is you will have at least 2 breakthroughs. And the breakthroughs are, you're either going to recognize something that's happening in your life that's not working, self-sabotage. You'll discover a hidden strength that you'll have. You'll improve a relationship, build a new skill, or overcome a challenge. So it's a completely customized experience. It's a journey. You're going to get 3 coaching sessions with me. And, if it's a one and done, like my rate is $500 an hour. So that could be like $1,500. You'll get 2 assessments. You'll get a 10-week playbook with a scorecard to measure progress and results that you'll do. And then each week you'll have motivational quotes, you'll have little activities and challenges that you can do. And then between those 3 sessions, at the beginning, the middle, and the end, you'll have an opportunity if you want to hop on a 10-minute phone call, or you have a question, or you need some email support. So all that would total like $2,250, which, is totally worth it. And kind of the math for coaching is, if you do everything you're supposed to be doing and you're committed to it, your ROI is going to be about 6 times the investment. So I've never done this. And to be fully transparent, I've been working with marketing coaches because I don't like to do marketing. I would just like to coach. And so this is the first time I've ever put together a package, and this is super cheap. So it would include the 3 sessions, 10 weeks. And if you make a decision today, it's $487. If you want to think about it, if you decide to join by the end of the month, it goes up to $787. And I'm only going to do this for 6 people. So I think we have like 16 people on the call.
Yes.
If you're interested,
This is Builders Direct Kitchens.
there's no pressure. I'm sorry.
Yes, Ed, could I give you a call back? I'm sitting with a client right now.
Yeah.
I've got your folder and I'll give you a call back to discuss it.
Okay. I think that was for someone else, but yeah, we can definitely do that. So that's kind of the opportunity today.
Okay.
I wanted to see if you guys had any questions or comments from today or anything else that I could do to kind of help support you. Hearing none. Okay. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet today. When you log off, you'll be given kind of like a 1-question survey. I'd love to kind of see the feedback that you have. Also, we'll send out the slides and the recording, hopefully later today. If you have any questions or want to hop on a call, I'm happy to do that. We also have to announce the winner for today. And I think the winner should be someone on the call. So I'm going to ask Shane, because I know he's keeping score of all the interactions. Shane, would you mind texting to either me or everyone who the winner of the 10-week challenge is? I'm totally putting him on the spot. Is he there? Okay. Okay, Elizabeth Dakin. All right. Thank you guys. So Elizabeth, I'll follow up with you. Congratulations. If you guys have any questions, anything else that you need, certainly feel free to reach out. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Go forward, become great leaders, and make the place in this world a better place than it was before you entered it. So thank you guys so much for your time and attention and participation, and have a lovely night. See you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye
Michael.
bye.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye.
Oh, there's
Good
Kimberly.
job, man.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
See you, buddy.
See you. And I'll stick on if you guys have any questions or anything.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You too.
Oh, you can stop it.